Today's small talk on food sovereignty and farmers' rights is an effort by the Public Interest Law Association of Pakistan. This is a Karachi-based NGO that does activism on public and legal issues. They have taken litigation to the Supreme Court on the right to education, the right to access to justice, clean water, and also there's a case in the High Court regarding genetically modified organisms. And this is one of their first events in Lahore, so I welcome the effort on their part. And also the Environment Journalists Association of Pakistan, EJAP. These subjects, or this rather important subject, doesn't get much traction in our discourse here in civil society in Lahore. It's my personal belief. Having been involved for quite a while and fought alongside very proudly on all sorts of very important issues. But things such as food sovereignty for some reason falls through the cracks. It's not something that really people have given a lot of attention to. And today's effort is to bring this subject to, informally, a small bunch of people to see if we can get some awareness and traction and sort of some understanding of this subject. And we're very lucky to have Dr. Nausheen Ali with us here from Karachi. Dr. Nausheen is with the Karti Dharti, has a paper out on the subject, formerly from Habib University and LUMS as well.
Let me start with a personal experience relating to fruit and seed and food in Pakistan. Growing up in Pakistan, I think all of us instinctively know what real fruit tastes like and what it looks like. You don't know that that's real fruit, but you have a sense that this is fruit. It was only when I went to the US for graduate studies and lived there, and this is a while back, 15, 16 years back, that for the first time I saw fruit without seed. And I was like, what is this? The watermelon has no seed. I remember being utterly shocked. No, I did not grow up in a rural area. I do not come with farming experience, though my grandparents did. And I still remember calling home and telling my mother, this fruit is tasteless and it's sad. And the fruit here is sad and I miss the fruit. And I lost 10 pounds by the way, my first semester ago. So I have this distinct memory that the picture perfect banana that's very yellow and it's big and those red apples are not tasty. And the reason you know that is because you've tasted real fruit. Right? For a lot of my American friends, they did not know what I was talking about. Right? So if you've had an experience which you didn't even know what to call it, it's only when you're faced with the contrast that you realize, oh my God, there is another meaning of fruit altogether. Right? A banana here is not a banana there. So fast forward 15 years, I live in Karachi, and the one fruit that I have to follow very regularly for my mother is the papita, okay, the papaya. And my parents like it very regularly. My father is no more, so I am the papita procurer of the house. And it's this year, for the first time, the past few months, that it's hard for me to find the desi papita with seed because the hybrid is everywhere. And it's that seedless hybrid. All the fruit walas say, "Ye hybrid le jaye, hybrid le jaye." You know, it looks great, it's orange, it's seedless. So, you know, when you even peel it, you're kind of happy that oh, itni sari seeds nahi hai at some level. You know, those are the things that, it's the ease, it's convenient, it looks good, like, I don't know, shopping. And it's the same aesthetic that they have brought to nature and to seed. Except that it doesn't work, it doesn't taste, it doesn't clean your stomach, to be very precise, as the desi papita. So I have to circulate and find real fruit, and I found it. But the only reason I start with this is to tell you that in my last 15 years, an experience that I thought was very remote, impossible for Pakistan, is now a reality here. We know what hybrid is, and in fact that's become the standard in the market. And that is both scary and it's a cause for concern. The story of our fruit is linked to the larger big report, and I welcome you. Itni copies to nahi main la saki, but jitni la saki, you're welcome to take a copy and read it when you can. But I'll give you a basic sense of what has been the change in the seed landscape, because I think it's important to understand the big picture before Rafe gets to particularly the two laws that we wish to focus on for this panel. So the subcontinent has been home to a huge variety of indigenous plants and indigenous crops that have been bred and selected for particular contexts by farmers, and particularly women farmers. And seed saving and seed exchange has been how life has continued in the world. And seed has been seen as a gift of nature, as a blessing that is owned by none, shareable by all, and can be saved by farmers from year to year. So what happened with the Green Revolution? I'm sure we all have heard about the Green Revolutions, or package of technologies that's introduced between the 40s and the 60s, and it promises a green revolution. Now what the textbooks that promoted and the media that promoted Green Revolution, it always portrayed the farmer as this illiterate, backward person who is an impediment to, solving world hunger and solving our agricultural crisis. What the Green Revolution did, now it had a lot of impact, right? It introduced monocropping, it introduced chemical fertilizer and pesticides at a large scale. But fundamentally what it did was, it changed the relationship of seed and the farmer. So now, seed is not part of the commons. We use the term commons to describe a shared global heritage. Right? So seed goes from being part of the commons, owned by none, shareable by all, saved and bred by farmers, to a commodity. Now you have to pay a price for this supposedly high quality seed, which is supposedly very productive in the short term. And that's a shift that now we are being promised another revolution called the gene revolution. So now we have genetically modified seeds, which are telling us a little bit more of the same, but the story is slightly scarier. So I think to understand the two laws that Rafe will explain later, we need to set the historical context right. And the historical context begins with the Green Revolution, which was the first to commercialize and commodify the concept of seed, and with genetically modified seed, the story continues. So I'll come to the report a little bit now and tell you what we studied. So the report documents the history and timeline of agricultural policy in Pakistan. It documents the legal regimes of governmental, non-governmental, private sector stakeholders, activists, civil society organizations, farmers. When you begin, we have to know what has been done before, and what is the landscape in which you want to intervene as a sociologist, an activist, a citizen, a lawyer, and that's the purpose of the report. It has a thick bibliography, and it has referenced as much data that we could collect, that I could give to a parliamentarian and say, आप इसको पढ़ें, और ये देखें इतना काम इस पे पहले हुआ है, और ये हमने इसमें additional किया है. So that was for us to understand what has happened already, but particularly to talk about food sovereignty and farmers' rights. And I'll talk a little bit about what I mean by that. But first, it's always, there are many complex definitions that circulate. So I wanted to clarify कि अभी हम जो terms use करेंगे, hybrid seed or genetically modified seed, we kind of have a vague idea, but let's get the definitions out there. So essentially, hybrid seeds result when breeders intentionally cross-pollinate two varieties of a plant. It's carefully controlled. Hybrid seeds can still be produced organically. Being a hybrid does not mean that a plant is genetically modified at the cellular level. What's interesting about hybrids is that they do not reproduce true, which means that plants grown from seeds, the second generation, may or may not share the desired characteristics selected from the first generation. So what this means is that I have to buy seed every year. Now this is quite radical. If you think about nature's continuing life cycle and a self-perpetuating form of nature, to introduce seed that does not reproduce true, that's one kind of seed, to introduce seeds that are called terminator seeds or suicide seeds that are actually the next generation will be sterile, is already a big intervention in ecology. Okay, so I want you to have that backdrop of hybrid seeds. Genetically modified seeds are created using high-tech solutions in the lab and include the complicated process of extracting material from one type of plant or even animal and inserting into another type of plant. The inserted genetic material can provide a desirable trait, and the important thing is that a plant's DNA is altered in a way that does not exist in nature. Let's take an example, right? So you see a tomato and you don't know if it's genetically modified or not. This tomato may have a gene from fish from some part of California, right? You can be having this tomato in Pakistan. Now if I am allergic to seafood, and these cases have happened, you do not know कि आपने कहाँ से निकाल के इसमें जीन डाला है. सबसे पहली बात तो ये है कि even if you label, like let's say the label says GMO, it does not tell me what, right? So there's complete lack of transparency in this lab experiment that is done, right? To produce this so-called tomato with a fish gene to make the tomato last. So it's very common to introduce a fish gene to make the tomato last longer or to look redder, or to play with one of the traits that sells in the market. Now there are a bunch of other problems right there, right? Forget laws. Let's just think at the level of seed, what are we doing to biology and to our seed heritage. You don't know that the bees that are around the tomato or the butterflies, how are they reacting to the GMO tomato, right? Because that's also part of life forms that one has to think of when you think of ecological impact. BT brinjal in India, for example, has been proven now to be cancerous, to cause tumors, and a lot of these studies, A, don't get funded, B, they happen far after the crop has been introduced into the market and people are like dying for you to discover कि यार ये genetically modified crop की वजह से हुआ था. So there is so much uncertainty and experimentation that has the potential to cause health hazards and ecological hazards that alone one should be cautious. And that's one of the key reasons why it's banned in a lot of European countries and other parts of the world. Or labeling is mandatory. I was talking to a Swiss artist yesterday who told me that Monsanto actually works out of Switzerland, but GMOs are banned in Switzerland. And I thought to myself, how convenient. Literally, how convenient. I mean, the taxes from Monsanto are of course making you eat organic food in Switzerland while we get screwed. And this is the domain of corporate agriculture, right? Of big corporate agriculture. Okay, so just to get a sense of what is at stake when we say genetically modified.